Let's go live. And we should be live. Hi, folks. Dave Adalian here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be on this wonderful planet, which you can see right here behind me, because I am actually on the moon right now. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is tonight's lunar event and then lunar events that are going to be coming up for the next few months. And we're going to start off with Deborah Bird, who is our editor and publisher over at EarthSky. And we'll be following up with Marcy Curran and John Goss, who are two of our favorite participants over there, and they are both experts at astronomy. John is a former president of the Astronomical League, and Marcy produces our night sky videos, and she contributes to making that entire, there's a team who does that. So anyway, hi, Deborah, how are you?
I'm good. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. I hope that worked. Let's see. No, it didn't. Okay. Anyhow, there we go. So what we just saw was a big blue moon, but blue moons are not blue generally, are they? Tell us what a blue moon is and what we were looking at just now.
Right. Sometimes they're blue, but the one tonight is probably not going to be blue because actual blue colored moons are very, very rare. So there was a blue colored moon in 1883 when Krakatoa erupted, and there was a blue colored moon reported in 1980 when Mount St. Helens erupted. So volcanic eruptions can cause a blue colored moon. Wildfire smoke occasionally can cause a blue colored moon, but that's not the kind of moon that's happening tonight.
That's an atmospheric effect.
That's
not the moon is not really blue. So what is a blue moon? Tell us about that.
Okay, so there are two different kinds of blue moons. First of all, let me say the moon tonight is blue in name only. So blue moon is just a name. It's just what we call the moon. So, we have the corn moon and the sturgeon moon and harvest moon and the hunter's moon and all the different moon names. And so the idea is that occasionally there's an extra full moon. So tonight's moon is the third of 4 full moons in a season. So a season is the period between a solstice and an equinox, as is the case right now, or an equinox and a solstice. For some weird reason, it's not the fourth of those 4 full moons, but it's the third. It's the third
one
of 4 full moons in a season, and that's what we have going tonight. And so, so that's one.
But that's not the only thing we have going tonight, is it? This is not just a blue moon. What else is going on?
The other thing we have going tonight is that this moon is a supermoon. So it's a moon that's a full moon that's particularly close to Earth. So it's a super blue moon.
And that means it'll be brighter, right? It'll be very bright.
So super moons, they have a whole different history than blue moons. But the name supermoon was actually coined way back in the 1970s. It was 1979. And it was coined by an astrologer. So back then, when we in astronomy, I was, busily talking about astronomy back then too. And we in astronomy used to call these extra close full moons perigean moons after the word perigee, which means closest to Earth. So perigean full moon is what we called them. Well, lo and behold, in astrology, they started calling them supermoons. And the name just caught on in astronomy. I like to feel like EarthSky had something to do with that because we loved the name supermoon, and people responded so much more to the name supermoon than to the name perigean full moon. It was so much more fun to talk about. And so, both the blue moon and the supermoon are interesting because they're both examples of modern folklore. They're actual folklore that have come to be in the modern era in our lifetimes.
Okay. Now, EarthSky is sort of responsible for popularizing supermoon, the term, maybe a little bit. you helped popularize something else. What did you help popularize? The second
Well,
tell us about the second definition of a blue moon
okay.
and how
So
it came to be.
the second definition, oh, I'm seeing we're getting some stuff in the chat. What time can we see the moon? Want me to answer
Okay,
that?
I got this one.
Okay.
The actual full moon is at 11:26 a.m. Pacific time. So that would be what, 18:26 universal, and that's the moment when the moon is completely full at opposition from the sun.
Yes, but that's not
So
when
there you go.
that's not when we can see the moon.
No, you can see the moon all the time.
No, we see the moon. No.
Correct me. That's what you're here for. You're the expert. I'm just the chat guy.
Yeah, we see the moon. We only see the moon half the time. So the moon, it's like we're on one side of the Earth, right? And so sometimes the moon is on the other side of the Earth and we can't see it. But the Earth rotates once a day. So the moon is in our sky for half a day, always. But it's not. But sometimes it's near the sun, and so we don't see it. So what's happening right now is that it's on the exact opposite side of the sun. That's what makes it look like a full moon. And the reason we can see it so well is that if it's opposite Earth from the sun, as the sun is going down, the moon is coming up. So the moon comes up tonight in the east at sunset when the sun is going down in the west. And
that's true wherever you are.
Yes, wherever you are on the globe, and the moon will be in the sky all night long, and it'll be a very bright blue
Extremely.
supermoon. Yes,
I noticed last night I was out, and the moon still had a couple of percentage left, but it was already so bright. It's hugely bright. Get out there.
I know. I woke up to ask you if you saw it. I saw it last night too.
Yeah, I was up in the middle of the night, and I looked out, and I thought, oh, what time is it? Is that dawn? No, that's the moon. The moon is so bright, it looked like the sun was coming up to me.
I know, it was so cool. Well, so yeah, when we first started talking about supermoons, which I guess we did, let's see, he coined it in 1979. I'd say we didn't, I don't think we started, EarthSky started, well, I had an earlier show before EarthSky, Stardate, and
I remember it.
Yes. But Stardate's still on the radio. But anyway, I started that show back in the 70s. But EarthSky, I started EarthSky in 1991. And I think it wasn't until the late 80s or early 90s that we in astronomy started talking about supermoons. And so when we first did it, we got a lot of pushback from some people like Neil deGrasse Tyson did not want us to use the term supermoon. And the reason was, he had a good point. The reason was that people got the impression that the moon was going to be super big in the sky. And it took, 20 years or more to get enough information out there consistently enough that people realized, oh no, it's not going to look perceptibly bigger, but it is going to look perceptibly brighter.
You can very much tell the difference. Did we explain the two blue moons sufficiently? Did we take care of that?
I don't think so. So the other kind of blue moon, so that's the supermoon. That's the supermoon part of tonight's moon. The other definition for blue moon is that it's the second full moon in a month. And that's the definition that I had something to do with, because I was the person who was wandering around in a library at the astronomy building there in the 1970s. And I was fishing through old issues of Sky and Telescope magazine looking for topics for my Stardate radio show. And I ran across Hugh Pruitt's article called Once in a Blue Moon. And in that article, Hugh Pruitt said that a blue moon was the second full moon of a month. He was basing that on some information in a 1937 Farmer's Almanac. Well, it turns out Hugh Pruitt was wrong. He made a mistake. He just misspoke or something. I don't know what he did, but he made a mistake. Yes. And so then there was a big uproar about that it wasn't a true blue moon. And then folklorists began to study it. So, folklorist Philip Hiscock is a folklorist who I believe he's in Nova Scotia somewhere, one of the universities up there. and contacted me and wanted to talk to me about blue moons and how the whole thing got started. And he wrote a whole study on blue moons and how, it was first mentioned on the radio series Stardate back in probably the 70s, late 70s or early 80s, and how the game Trivial Pursuit picked it up, and it was in a kid's almanac. And so pretty soon people started calling the second full moon of a month a blue moon. And so yet another example of modern folklore. I mean, this is how folklore comes to be.
It is. And so that sort of means that we have a true blue moon tonight. Tonight is a third full moon in a single season. The original definition, as it were.
The original. But remember that definition must have come from someplace too. Yeah. We just don't know where it came from.
Well, that's something for the mythologists to look into. They can figure that one out. We'll leave that to them. Speaking of where to look for things, we should bring Marcy in from backstage and ask her about where and when we can see the blue moon. So Debbie, thanks for being here, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. And we're going to switch over to Marcy now. So bye, Debbie. And hello, Marcy.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? How's things in your neck of the woods?
I'm doing good, thank you. And I also saw that beautiful bright moon rise through. It was popping in and out through clouds last night. It was very pretty.
So, where do people look tonight for the moon? You're our stuff in the sky lady. Tell us where and when.
Well, you can look towards the east as soon as the sun's setting, and you will soon see that big bright moon over your eastern horizon. It'll be highest in the sky around midnight. And then, of course, remember to look towards the western horizon right around sunrise, because it will be setting in the west. And the bright object near the moon tonight is going to be Saturn. And Saturn right now is going to be opposite the sun on September 8th, when it will be at its brightest. And so Saturn's going to be bright. You can catch Saturn near the moon both tonight and tomorrow night.
Okay.
You're putting up our chart.
I can't remember. Do you have a chart for us?
I did put in a chart of the moon with Saturn for tonight.
Oh,
I think it's slide 2.
There we go.
Sure. Yes.
That should be it.
And of course,
if I did things right, Marcy, we should be looking at it right now. Oh, we did.
Its position's going to vary between what time you look and your location on the globe, but it's going to be the only bright star-like object in the area near the bright moon. And if the moon is so bright that it's kind of blocking it, kind of use your finger to just kind of block that moonlight out, and Saturn should pop right into view.
Okay. Now, you say it's the only bright star-like object. How can we tell the difference between a planet and a star?
Generally,
look up and we see something bright.
Right. Generally, planets do not twinkle, and bright stars generally do twinkle. So that is
so if it's not twinkling, it's probably Saturn, unless it's really close to the horizon, in which case it might a little bit. So anyway, but that's not the only thing we've got going on this month with the moon, is it?
Well, as Debbie mentioned,
not this month, rather for this season, for the whole season, we have moons coming up. I'm sorry.
We do have 4 supermoons in a row, and of course, the one tonight is the first of the 4. The next one is going to be September 18th, and it's going to be a harvest moon. And also that night, we will have a partial lunar eclipse, which we can go a little more in detail later. In October 17th, we've got the Hunter's Moon, which is a supermoon, and that will be the closest of these 4 supermoons, is the one in October. And then we finish up the supermoon season for 2024, November 15th, with the Beaver full moon, and that's again November 15th.
Okay, so that'll be the super duper moon.
So the last
in October. That means it'll be the brightest one of the series, I believe.
Correct.
Right. So it will be the closest.
Right. Okay. And the cool thing about both the harvest moon and the hunter's moon is just because of the angle in the northern hemisphere of the ecliptic, where the moon is positioned near the horizon. They rise about 30 minutes earlier each day instead of the average 50 minutes. So you have a couple of nights in a row around the harvest moon and the hunter's moon where you will have a really bright moon kind of sequentially a couple of days in a row.
Okay. And the other thing is we will be live streaming during that eclipse. We'll be joining timeanddate.com, I believe, and
Right.
we'll be live streaming that. So remind us again what the date of that is.
Okay, the lunar eclipse is overnight of September 17th, 18th. And of course, it's only a partial total eclipse, a partial lunar eclipse.
Partial lunar eclipse.
Of course, when you have a penumbral is when the you've just got the light shadow of Earth kind of, just kind of shading the moon. And to be a lunar eclipse, you have to go into the umbra, the dark shadow of Earth. And only 8% of the moon is going to have that dark shadow on it. So I wouldn't even say there's a bite out of the moon that night. It's more like a little nibble or a sliver. And it doesn't last very long. Let's see, it starts at about 9:14 Central Time and is over by 10:16 Central Time. So it's not a long eclipse, but you'll be able to see, the penumbral shadow moving across it, and then just the little tiny nibble out of the corner for when it's in a partial lunar eclipse.
So penumbral and umbral, those both mean shadow, but pen means near. So it's a near shadow.
Right.
And what's going on, let's see if I can go with my visual aid here, is the sun, most people are aware of this, is much wider in the sky than the Earth is, even from this apparent distance. And so when the Earth casts its shadow toward the moon, it's casting a shadow that's complete and a shadow that's partial.
Right.
And so the penumbral shadow is the partial shadow, and it'll enter the lunar disk, the lunar face, before the umbral shadow, right?
Right.
And there'll be a period of dimming. Tell us about what's the process going to look like? What's going to happen? What are the events?
Well, once the penumbral shadow, it's just blocking like part of the sunlight. So that's why it's kind of a lighter shadow in space. You'll just kind of see it, just kind of a gray darkening going across the moon. And sometimes it depends on your atmosphere, how clear it is, whether you really notice it. A lot of times it's around 50 or 60% before you can truly say that you're seeing that shadow. But again, it depends on your visual acuity and things like that. And then once the penumbral is completely covered, that's when it moves into the darker shadow. And that basically Earth is completely cutting off sunlight then. And then you will just see just kind of a dark little sliver coming in on the edge of the moon. And it depends on where you're at on the globe, where that particular shadow is going to line up. But it's only going to eclipse basically 8% of the moon. So it's going to be noticeable, but just along the limb somewhere. The edge. And
only portions of the Earth will be in line to see this. Not the entire globe.
If the moon is out, you should be able to see it. It's basically, they said, in the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
So it just depends on your location.
So it depends on your location. So are there any other spectacular once in a lifetime lunar events coming up? In astronomy, we have once in a lifetime events every single day. So I expect there might be more. Have you had anything? Do we have any hidden events coming up that you need to tell us about?
Not in the near future with dealing with the moon. But the cool thing about a supermoon, although, as Debbie was mentioning, it has kind of become sensationalized. But the cool thing is it gets people looking at the sky. It is out there in popular culture now, and people that don't even normally look up are like, ooh, supermoons. So, as an astronomy educator, I'm always happy to see somebody out there looking and just to see what they can see.
And you know what? That's something that you might want to do is go out before the night of the eclipse, have a look at the moon, and get used to how bright it is.
Right.
That way you can have an idea in mind when you step out to see, oh, that is clearly not as bright as the one last night or the night before.
Right.
Because that full moon does actually, it's not quite full, but it's pretty close for a couple of days, isn't it?
Yeah, it's usually fairly round both the day before and after the full moon. And that penumbral shadow, again, it's kind of like a cloud just kind of going over it. You just see it darkening. And once it gets near, half covering the moon, you can see a difference between, the light coming from the moon. So it's always worth, looking.
It is always worth looking. And so we'll be looking for the man in the moon, or the man on the moon, depending on which version of the myth you like. And speaking of how to see the mares, because the mares are the C's on the moon, we have John Goss. So Marcy, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye. And we're going to bring in John Goss, former AL president, and he is going to explain to us how to best view the moon. Aren't you, John? Oh, he's got his moon glasses on.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Dave. Hope you can hear me fine.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, well, you're quite welcome here. Yeah, I have my glasses because really this is one time in which you're going to want to see. You're going to wear sunglasses at night to look at the super full moon. It's it's a little bit brighter than average, and so it's nice to have a little help on seeing it with the unaided eye at least. Before I jump into most of my stuff, I'd like to just mention supermoon or no supermoon on how big or how small the full moon really is in the sky. It's pretty small. People have a hard time believing that you could stack 360 of these things across and it would go all the way across the sky. So the moon's pretty small, really. A supermoon's a little bit bigger. And the reason why I say this is because what I want to tell you about a cool trick to see.
I love cool tricks.
To see the full moon. Yeah, it's pretty basic. And I think it's my first slide here, Dave. It is looking at the moon without optical aid and seeing much more detail than you would normally do. And the idea here.
And apparently it involves a bottle cap.
It doesn't have to be a bottle cap. That's what I used. You just want some opaque plastic sheet, and you want to drill a hole in it. And the hole is your small 1/16 of an inch or 1.5 millimeter, depending on which drill bit you have. Drill a hole in it. Hold the bottle cap up to your eye while you're looking at the moon. Now, why would we want to do this? Well, for a couple of reasons, for two big reasons. This hole reduces the amount of bright moonlight entering your eye. So it cuts down on the glare that you see. So instead of just seeing a bright, fuzzy, glary object in the sky, you'll actually see some detail on the moon. Number two is that the hole is small enough that it lets light in that will only enter the center portion of your eye's pupil. The outer portion of the pupil generally is where most eye defects occur. Astigmatism, nearsightedness, and so on generally falls on the outer portion of the eye there. So this blocks that. So it really increases your visual acuity. So when you see this, when you try this, it's easy to do. When you try, it doesn't have to be on full moon or just on a bright moon. When you try it, you'll see the round moon in the sky. It's still very small. You're not magnifying anything, but you'll be able to clearly see the light and dark areas on the moon. You'll be able to see that there isn't much glariness in your eye. So it's not like you're being overwhelmed by the brightness of the moon. Something pretty cool to see. So let's go on to my next slide and I'll show you a little bit what it will be like, I hope. Okay, even though I say this is through binoculars, I'll explain that in a moment. But you'll be able to see the light areas and the dark areas on the moon just by using the bottle cap technique. So that helps out really well. Now let's move on to binoculars. Nothing really complicated here. In fact, a lot of times I use simple birding binoculars. You could have a larger pair, of course, but a small pair of binoculars works really well. This pair is 8 power. Okay, so it magnifies things 8 times. Well, what will you be able to see with 8 power? Well, the picture that you're looking at shows pretty much what you will be able to see. You'll be able to see light areas and dark areas on the moon. The dark areas are flat lunar plains they have a few craters, but not very many. The lighter areas are both mountainous regions and heavily cratered areas. You might think it should be flip-flop on that light and dark, but no, that's the way it goes. So be able to see the ocean of storms pretty easily with binoculars and with the bottle cap technique. You'll be able to see the ocean of storms. With binoculars, you'll also be able to make out the Sea of Tranquility, which will be on the on the right side of the moon. And that's where Apollo 11 landed. Of course, the other Apollo missions landed other places that you're looking at right now, but I'm not going to go through them all. So you'll be able to see some interesting spots on the moon. And keep in mind, the moon has some pretty big craters, but keep in mind that since it's a full moon, you probably won't be able to see many craters, at least with binoculars. Through a telescope, you can't. But with binoculars, you can't, because since the light is coming face onto the moon and then reflected back to us, it casts no real shadows. That's the walls of the craters and mountains or such don't really cast shadows at all. So you won't be able to see them, at least not very well. And with binoculars, you won't be able to see it. But I think that's pretty cool, considering that the moon is normally 240,000 miles away. But on the supermoon deal, it's somewhere around 221,000 miles. So it's what's that, 10% closer or so.
Right.
So that means it's that much bigger in the sky, and it reflects so much more light. I think something like 28% more light
About
this month.
30.
So something like, okay, it's around 30.
Yeah, somewhere in
like
that area.
And because not each full moon is the exact same distance from the Earth as all the others. So there's some variation there. But you want to go out and look at this stuff. And one more thing for you. If you don't believe how small or how large the moon is in the sky, Marcy commented about how you can block it just by holding your finger up to it.
Right.
And it'll block the moon out completely. Another trick or activity to do, take a straw, a drinking straw, and hold it up to your eye and look at the moon through it. Now, I know you've probably all heard of the big moon illusion, in that the full moon seems so much bigger, and I guess so much brighter, when it is closer to the horizon.
Right.
And as it rises, it miraculously shrinks somehow, somewhat.
An illusion.
Okay, that's an illusion. So tonight,
this is how we disprove it.
This is one way of doing it. So tonight, when you see that moon, hold up a drinking straw and just look through it. And note how small the full moon is through the drinking straw. Come back, I don't know, a couple hours later when the moon's quite a bit higher in the sky, and try it again. And you'll see it's exactly the same size.
Exactly the same.
So that's a confirmation that you're not going crazy or anything. So the moon may look a little bit bigger as it's rising, and it shrinks as it rises, but not really. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
There are a couple of ways. Oh, please continue. Please keep rolling.
No, Dave, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you if you had any questions.
Well, you know what? I don't have a question as much as I have a comment. One of the things that I learned, let me extend that out toward my camera there, is that all people are essentially proportionate. So if you hold up your pinky at arm's length, it covers about 1 degree of the sky. And since the moon covers half a degree, you can cover the moon up twice with the pinky, the tip of your pinky finger.
That's right, everybody.
And so that's great, you've always got that thing with you, usually, I would assume. And so you can do that. And over the course of the night, you can stick that finger up in the air, pinky out, and,
if you're a really big person, you're going to have big fingers and you're going to have a long arm. So the actual angle is still the same because your finger's that much further away from you. One thing I forgot to mention, it just occurred to me, sunglasses. People think I'm crazy when I say this. Sunglasses. Wear these suckers when you look through binoculars at the moon. The moon will be very bright through binoculars. And
that's a great idea.
So just go boom. It helps. It helps.
That's why we have you here, John. You're an experienced observer. That has never occurred to me, and I've been observing for decades.
Well, you've heard the song "Wear Sunglasses at Night," so that's what it comes from. Not really. I just made that up.
Glasses at night. And the other thing that you mentioned was the poking of a hole through. You can also do that with your finger. It's not, it'll be variable, so you'll have to, use that. I've used that technique when I forgot my glasses and I have to read something. I will, because it creates a coherent light pathway.
Sure.
That's an awful
increases
lot.
your angular resolution. One thing on this hole,
Exactly.
I said 1/16 of an inch, and really that's pretty much what you want. If you have something that goes 1/32 of an inch, that cuts the light down quite a bit. Then it's too dark. But if you go 1/8 of an inch, it lets in too much of the bad light around your eye and too much light, and you just won't won't have a sharpest view as what you should. 1/16 is what you want.
It's all about observing reducing the pupil, the entry pupil, as we say.
You betcha.
Okay. All right. What else do we need to know about this, John? I think the most important thing for this is to go outside and have a look, right?
You took the words out of my mouth. That is the most important thing. You can talk all you want. You can read all you want. But if you don't go outside and look at it, okay. Well, maybe next month. But, you do have a few months of this stuff coming up. So as I said, if you missed out tomorrow night or tonight, you can try it tomorrow night or the following night. Any bright moon will work with this pinhole idea.
Yeah,
that's what I got.
And it doesn't have to be a bright moon. You can go out and look at the moon all month long. She's in constant and changes continuously for us. Puts on a different show every night of the month, and they're all worth watching.
There's nothing you can do about it, so you better enjoy it.
Not a thing. Not a thing. Well, there's one thing you can do. You can go out and enjoy it. Go out and enjoy it. So anyway, thank you, John. Appreciate the time. Thank you for stopping in.
My pleasure.
I'm going to let you go, and we're going to wrap this up. So adios, adieu.
Adios. Maybe. Can't get rid of me, huh?
I can't. Okay, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of that. I sure did. I learned a lot more about the moon than I already knew, and I already knew a lot. So anyway, it is tonight a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars up above in the sky, etc. Thank you for joining us. Come and visit us at earthsky.org. Subscribe and like. And if you like the shirts that Marcy and I were wearing, you can get those at the EarthSky store. And let me tell you, this is a high quality tee. I know my t-shirts. This one is top notch. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.